Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are walking into a story that, honestly, it feels like it was ripped straight out of a horror movie script. But the terrifying part is that every single detail we are about to discuss is real.
Oh, absolutely.
We are talking about Halloween night 2002.
A date that's already, synonymous with masks and fear, which is just grimly appropriate for this case.
Yeah.
Even if you tried to write this as fiction, an editor might tell you it's a bit too on the nose.
Right. Too perfect.
The date, the setting, the characters, it all aligns almost too perfectly with a cinematic tragedy.
Exactly. So picture the scene for a moment. It's October 31st. We are in Brooklyn, which is one of the most exclusive, high-end neighborhoods in São Paulo, Brazil.
And when you say exclusive, you mean it.
Oh yeah, this is the kind of place where the streets are lined with these ancient, beautiful trees, the homes are massive compounds, and safety is like the #1 commodity. These houses have high walls, electric fences, 24-hour surveillance.
They're fortresses.
Total fortresses, designed to keep the chaos of the outside world at bay.
And that creates this paradox of security, doesn't it? The wealthier you are, the higher the walls you build and the safer you feel. But walls only work if the danger is on the outside.
That's it.
We have the psychological reliance on perimeter defense. Guards, cameras, gates. We assume the threat is the stranger, the intruder, the other.
And that is the hook of this entire nightmare. While the rest of the wealthy elite in São Paulo were locking their doors tight to keep danger out, inside one specific mansion, an 18-year-old girl named Suzanne von Richthofen was unlocking the door to let death in.
It wasn't a break-in.
No.
It was an invitation.
And that single distinction just changes everything. This wasn't a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong in the traditional sense. This was a calculated dismantling of a family from the inside out. The Trojan horse wasn't a wooden statue. It was the daughter they raised. So today, we're going to unpack the case of the girl who killed her parents. We have a stack of sources that are incredibly detailed.
Really comprehensive stuff.
And our mission today isn't just to recount the gore, because frankly, it's brutal. We want to understand the how and the why. How does a girl who has everything, and I mean everything, wealth, education, a loving family, orchestrate the execution of her own parents?
That is the central question.
Yeah.
It really is.
Huh.
We often think of crime as a result of desperation, right? Poverty, lack of opportunity. But this is something else entirely.
Yeah.
This is a study in the psychology of privilege, of narcissism, and what prosecutors later call moral madness. It forces you to look at what happens when a person views other human beings not as people, but as obstacles.
Obstacles to be removed.
Exactly.
So let's get a lay of the land here. Who are we dealing with? At the center of this whole thing, we have Suzanne von Richthofen.
Right. Suzanne is 18 at the time of the crime. She's a law student at the Pontifical Catholic University of São Paulo, which is a very, very prestigious institution.
Top tier.
She speaks 3 languages fluently.
Mm-hmm.
She's blonde, poised, and by all accounts, the angelic face of this very prominent family.
Mm.
And the name itself, von Richthofen, that carries massive historical weight.
The Red Baron.
She is a descendant of the family line that produced the Red Baron, the famous World War I flying ace.
So there's this layer of aristocracy in the bloodline. It adds this old world expectation to her life.
Exactly. This is a family that measures its history in centuries. There's a sense of legacy, of upholding a name. It's not just any family.
Then we have the victims, her parents, Manfred and Mauritia.
Right. Manfred von Richthofen, 49, was an engineer and the director of DERSA, which is the state highway management company.
Big deal.
A very big deal. In Brazil, that is a position of significant bureaucratic power and influence. And Mauritia, 50, was a respected psychiatrist.
Which is such a tragic irony, isn't it? You have a mother whose entire career is dedicated to understanding the human mind, healing it, spotting pathologies, and yet she couldn't see the lethal pathology developing under her own roof.
It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the cracks in the foundation are invisible to the people standing right on top of them. We assume professionals have this X-ray vision at home, but parents often have a blind spot for their own children.
Of course.
They see the child they raise, not necessarily the adult that child is becoming.
And finally, we have the co-conspirators, the Cravinhos brothers, Daniel, who is Suzanne's boyfriend, and his brother, Christian.
And they represent the collision of 2 very different worlds, which we'll definitely get into. If the von Richthofens were the powder keg, the Cravinhos brothers were the match.
Okay, let's start there. Part 1. The perfect family and, the cracks beneath the surface. Because from the outside, the von Richthofen life looked absolutely flawless.
It really did. And the setting is crucial here. The mansion in Brooklyn was valued at around 3 million reals, or roughly $600,000 at the time. Though in purchasing power, it's a palace.
A palace, yeah.
It had a swimming pool, a library, an office. It was a compound of comfort.
And inside this compound, you have what looks like the perfect nuclear family. Suzanne, the golden child, and her younger brother Andreas, who was 16.
Andreas is described as quiet, very intelligent, and deeply into model airplanes. That was his whole thing.
A hobby.
A serious hobby. Suzanne, on the other hand, she was the center of the family photos. She was the one seemingly following in her parents' footsteps towards a high-powered career. But then, through Andreas' hobby, a variable is introduced that just changes the chemical balance of this entire family.
Entered Daniel Corvinus.
Exactly. Daniel was 21. He was an instructor and enthusiast for model airplanes. That's how he met Andreas, and then through Andreas, he met Suzanne.
Okay.
But Daniel was from a completely different socioeconomic reality.
Right, the sources really highlight this class divide sharply. Daniel was from a working class background. He was unemployed, had dropped out of school, and was known to smoke marijuana regularly.
So to Manfred and Marizia, Daniel represented a complete lack of prospects. He was everything they didn't want for their daughter. He was, in their eyes, stagnation.
A dead end.
A dead end. But to Suzanne, he likely represented something else entirely. Rebellion, excitement, a break from the rigid, expectations of her aristocratic life.
And this is where things start to spiral. The parents did what most parents in that situation would probably do. They forbade the relationship. They tried to put a stop to it.
And it backfired. In a textbook psychological phenomenon, often called Romeo and Juliet syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
When you prohibit a teenage relationship, you don't end it. You paradoxically strengthen the bond. You create an us against the world narrative.
Right.
The parental disapproval becomes the very fuel that keeps the relationship burning. It gives it a purpose.
It stops being just about attraction and starts being about autonomy. It's, you can't tell me what to do.
Precisely. The relationship transforms into a crusade for freedom. And we see Suzanne's behavior change drastically during this period. Sources mention increased substance use, marijuana, sure, but also paint thinner, glue, even MDMA.
Whoa, wait, glue and paint thinner? That sounds incredibly destructive. That's not just, partying like a rich kid at a club.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Inhalant abuse like that is often associated with much more desperate socioeconomic conditions in Brazil. For Suzanne to be doing that, it indicates a desire to fully immerse herself in Daniel's world, or maybe just a desire to escape reality, to numb out completely.
Something is seriously wrong there.
Very wrong.
Yeah.
But it also likely lowered her inhibitions, and the narrative in her head shifted. She began viewing her parents not as protectors, but as the enemy. They were the wall standing between her and her freedom with Daniel.
And it wasn't just emotional freedom, she wanted financial freedom too, right? There was a conflict about an apartment.
Yes. This was a major point of contention. Suzanne allegedly asked her father to buy an apartment so she and Daniel could live together.
So she's asking him to fund the relationship he despises.
Exactly. And Manfred, understandably, refused. He even threatened to cut off her allowance if she didn't get her act together, focus on her studies.
And this seems to be the tipping point. This wasn't just teenage angst where you slam your door and play loud music. This was a fundamental shift where she started looking at people as problems. And how do you solve a problem?
You remove it. It's a transactional view of human life.
Yeah.
It's chillingly logical. If the parents are the obstacle to the money and the freedom, then the parents must go. It's cold, calculating logic, stripped of all emotion, all humanity.
So, okay, let's move to part 2, the conspiracy. Because, like you said, this wasn't a crime of passion. They didn't just snap one night during an argument. This was planned meticulously.
It was a calculated conspiracy that took months to design. Suzanne was the architect. She knew the routine. She knew the alarm codes. She knew where the blind spots in the security were. Daniel and his brother Christian. They were the executors, the muscle.
And the motive. We talked about the apartment, but the sources mention a much bigger pot of gold at the end of this particular rainbow.
Oh yeah. The estate was valued at around 17 million US dollars, or 5.5 million reals at the time. That's a life-changing amount of money.
For anyone.
For anyone. There were also rumors, which we'll definitely touch on later, about a secret stash of money, but primarily it was about the inheritance and the immediate freedom to be with Daniel without any parental interference.
So we arrive at October 31st, 2002, Halloween night. The plan goes into motion.
The planning was meticulous. The very first step was removing the innocent bystander. Suzanne drove her younger brother Andreas to a LAN party, an all-night gaming session at an internet cafe.
That detail always, always chills me. She ensured her brother was safe. It implies she had enough empathy to save him. Or maybe she just didn't want to witness.
It's a point of huge debate. It could be compartmentalization. She loved her brother but hated her parents. Or it could be purely logistical. Andreas was a variable they couldn't control. If he woke up, he might scream, he might fight back. He had to be removed from the equation.
So Andreas is dropped off. He's safe. Suzanne returns to the mansion. It's late. What happens next?
She enters the house and disables the alarm system and the surveillance from the inside. She knows exactly how to render the fortress completely defenseless. Then she unlocks the door and lets Daniel and Christian in.
And they aren't carrying guns. This isn't a quick, distant crime.
No, they are carrying iron bars that Daniel had crafted himself. He had wrapped them in material to muffle the sound of the impact. This was designed to be brutal, primitive weaponry.
They go upstairs. Manfred and Mauricia are asleep in their beds.
The attack was overwhelming. I won't linger on the graphic details unnecessarily, but it is important to understand the sheer brutality to grasp the psychology.
Of course.
They used the iron bars. When that wasn't immediately fatal, they used towels to suffocate them. A plastic garbage bag was used on Mauricia. It was messy, physical, and horribly intimate violence.
And where is Suzanne while all this is happening? Is she hiding? Is she running away? Is she in the car?
No. She is downstairs sitting in the library.
Just sitting there.
Waiting. And this is what the expert analysis in the sources focuses on so heavily. The psychological capability required to sit silently in a library, surrounded by your family's books, while your parents are being bludgeoned to death directly above your head.
I can't even fathom that.
It suggests a profound, profound lack of empathy,
Ugh.
a complete detachment.
She didn't scream. She didn't call 911 in a panic. She just waited for the silence.
It's what we call dissociation, or extreme compartmentalization. In her mind, the task was being completed. She'd done her part, now she was just waiting for the boys to do theirs.
After the silence falls, they start the staging. They have to make this look like a robbery gone wrong.
Right. They go downstairs and they ransack the library. They pull books off the shelves, they scatter papers, and they cut open a briefcase to make it look like thieves were desperately searching for cash.
But they made amateur mistakes.
Huge mistakes. They took about 8,000 reals, some euros, and US dollars. But they left expensive jewelry in plain sight. They left a revolver that any professional criminal would have snatched immediately.
It's like they'd only ever seen robberies in movies.
Exactly. It looked like a movie set of a robbery, not a real one.
And then, the alibi.
Sudine and Daniel left the house and immediately drove to a motel. Not for romance, but to get a receipt. They needed a paper trail. They needed proof that they were somewhere else.
It's just so cold. Here's my receipt, officer. I was at a motel at the time of the murders.
Then, at 3:30 a.m., they pick up Andreas from the LAN party. They drive back to the house, and Suzine discovers the bodies with her brother.
She forces her brother to walk into that scene. That's horrible.
She does. And her performance begins immediately. But even then, there were cracks. She was reportedly asking people, "What do I do now?" instead of screaming, "Who did this?" It was procedural, not emotional. She was thinking about next steps.
Which brings us to part 3, the investigation. Because this perfect crime unraveled incredibly fast. It took, what, 8 days?
8 days. The police were suspicious almost from the moment they walked in.
What were the biggest red flags for them?
Well, first, the house itself. No forced entry. The alarm was disabled from the inside. That immediately narrows your suspect list to people who have the code.
Which is basically the family and maybe the staff.
Exactly. A very short list. Second, the crime scene. It was too neat in some places, too messy in others. It just felt staged. And then there was Suzanne's demeanor.
Yeah.
She was cold, emotionless.
Yeah.
And get this, sources mentioned that just days after the funeral, she threw a pool party at the mansion.
A pool party. Her parents are in the ground less than a week, and she's hosting a pool party at the crime scene.
It shows a complete and utter disconnect from the reality of the loss. For her, it seems she was celebrating her newfound freedom. She thought she had won.
Unbelievable. But the smoking gun wasn't at the house. It was a purchase made by Christian Krevinos, Daniel's brother.
This is the dumb criminal moment you always see. Christian, the mechanic who is usually broke, walks into a dealership and buys a brand new Suzuki GSX motorcycle.
A very nice bike. An expensive bike.
A very expensive bike, and he pays for it in cash. Specifically, he lays down 36 $100 bills on the counter.
Wow. In Brazil, paying with a stack of US $100 bills is a massive, massive red flag.
It's practically a neon sign blinking, "I just robbed someone."
Yeah.
The police were already tracking their phone calls. They saw hundreds of calls between Suzanne and Daniel in the days leading up to and after the murders. And when this purchase happened, the net just closed tight.
So on November 8th, 2002, 8 days later, they're all brought in, and they crack almost immediately.
They all confessed. But immediately, the finger-pointing began. Daniel claims Suzanne was the mastermind who manipulated them into it. Suzanne claims she was this fragile, innocent girl who was coerced and threatened by her dominant boyfriend.
Which sets the stage for the trial in 2006, and this was the O.J. Simpson trial of Brazil.
Absolutely. 5,000 people applied for just 80 seats in the courtroom. It was a national obsession. You have the beautiful rich girl and the working class boyfriend. It had every single element of a TV soap opera.
And the prosecutor, Roberto Tardelli, he did not hold back at all.
No. He called Suzanne the personification of evil. He argued that she wasn't a victim, she was the boss. She used those boys as her weapons to get her inheritance.
There is a specific moment from the trial that was caught on camera that I think just sealed her fate in the court of public opinion, the scripted tears.
Yes. This is incredible footage. You can literally see Suzanne's lawyer leaning over and whispering to her. He is instructing her to cry. He's telling her now. Now is the time to show emotion.
And she couldn't do it.
She tried. She scrunched up her face, but it was so clearly forced. It revealed that she viewed the entire trial as a performance, but she was just a bad actor. She couldn't manufacture the grief because it simply wasn't there.
The jury didn't buy the fragile girl defense for a second.
Not at all. The verdict was severe. Suzanne and Daniel were sentenced to 39 years and 6 months. Christian got 38 years and 6 months.
And these were classified as hediondos, right? What does that mean exactly?
Yes, heinous crimes. In Brazilian law, that classification is reserved for crimes that shock the collective conscience. It restricts parole possibilities and makes the serving conditions much stricter. It's the system's way of saying this was beyond the pale.
Okay, let's go deeper into the mind of Suzanne von Richthofen, because this is where it gets really unsettling. Part 5. The psychology. You mentioned earlier this concept of moral madness.
This was a term from 19th century psychiatry that the prosecution actually revived for the trial, folie morale. It describes a person whose rational thought is perfectly intact. They are smart, they can plan, they can do math, they can study law, but their moral sensibility is dead.
So they know the difference between right and wrong intellectually, but they don't feel it. There's no emotional consequence.
Exactly. It's a deficit of the emotional hardware required for empathy. Suzanne actually said at one point in an interview, if my parents hadn't opposed it, they would be alive.
Wow, blaming the victims for their own murder.
It's classic narcissistic deflection. In her mind, her desire for the boyfriend for freedom was a supreme right. Anyone who opposed that right was bringing destruction upon themselves. They had it coming.
There's also the story about the Rorschach tests. This happened years later, in prison, right?
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
It's so revealing. In 2014, she was evaluated and showed signs of egocentrism and infantilism. But in 2018, when she was up for another evaluation to potentially progress her sentence regime to something less strict, she tried to cheat the test.
How do you even cheat a Rorschach test? It's just ink blots.
She obtained the plates, the actual images, in advance. She studied what the healthy or normal answers were supposed to be. She rehearsed them.
So instead of seeing, a bloody massacre or darkness, she memorized that she's supposed to see 2 butterflies or 2 people dancing.
Precisely. But the psychologist caught her. Her answers were too perfect. A genuine reaction to an ink blot involves hesitation, stumbling, correcting yourself. Suzanne rattled off the correct psychological answers like she was reading from a script.
No hesitation.
Zero hesitation. It proves she was still trying to manipulate the system, trying to outsmart the doctors.
It just proves the mastermind persona never went away. She was still treating life as a game of chess where she had to outmaneuver everyone.
And that is the danger, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you are smart enough to fake sanity, you are incredibly dangerous.
Now, we have to talk about the money again, because there is a subplot here that sounds like it's straight out of a spy novel. Part 6, The Dirty Money Mystery.
This is where the story gets really murky, and frankly, even more compelling. There have been persistent allegations and rumors that Manfred von Richthofen, the father, had embezzled approximately 10 million euros from the highway agency, Dursa.
10 million euros. That is a massive, massive fortune.
And the allegation is that this money was hidden in secret Swiss bank accounts. But here is the real kicker.
Okay.
The accounts were opened in Suzanne's name when she turned 18, which was in November 2001, just under a year before the murders.
So wait a minute. If the money was already in her name, she didn't technically need to kill them to get it, did she? Or am I missing something?
Well, she might have had legal access, but she didn't have control. Her father likely held the literal keys, the passwords, the authority over the accounts. The theory is that the robbery was a cover not just to get the cash in the house, but to eliminate the only person standing between her and full, unfettered control of that offshore fortune.
That changes the motive from I want to be with my boyfriend to I want to be an independently wealthy multimillionaire living in Europe.
It adds a layer of cold, hard financial calculation that makes the crime even more heinous, if that's possible.
What happened to that money? Does anyone know?
That's the mystery. There's a legal concept called the Slayer Rule. Generally, you cannot inherit from someone you murdered. Public opinion obviously says she shouldn't get a dime.
Of course.
But because the Swiss accounts were already in her name before the deaths, the legal status is incredibly ambiguous.
So as of today?
The money is reportedly frozen or just unresolved. It's a ghost fortune sitting in a vault in Zurich, waiting.
That is just wild to think about. Let's talk about the aftermath, part 7. There is one victim in this story who survived that night, but his life was completely destroyed. Andreas.
Andreas is the true tragedy of this story. He was 16 years old. In a single night, he lost his parents to a brutal murder and his sister to prison and a betrayal you can't even comprehend. He was left utterly alone in that massive, empty house.
There's a heartbreaking incident in 2017 involving him, right?
Yes. Years later, Andreas was found wandering the streets of a neighborhood in São Paulo. He was disheveled, confused, and he was clutching a family heirloom. Sources said he had scars on his legs from jumping over fences, just running.
He sounds like a man completely lost, just haunting his own life.
It was a clear sign of unhealed, massive trauma. He had been a brilliant student, a PhD candidate, but the weight of what happened it broke him.
And the house, the mansion itself.
It was eventually sold. It was painted white to hide the exposed brick that everyone in Brazil recognized from the news. For a long time on Google Maps, the house was just blurred out. It's a cursed location in the minds of Brazilians.
Meanwhile, Suzanne became a sort of celebrity in prison.
She was sent to Tremembé prison, which is known as the prison of the famous in Brazil. She became an inmate influencer of sorts. And get this, in 2024, she sued the biggest TV network in Brazil, TV Globo.
What for?
For broadcasting her psychological records, the ones about the Rorschach test we just discussed. She claimed it violated her right to privacy.
The woman who violated the ultimate right of her parents, their right to live, sued for her own right to privacy.
And she won. She was awarded about $1,900 US.
That's infuriating.
It's the irony of the justice system. Even a convicted murderer has rights. But it definitely rubbed the public the wrong way, as you can imagine.
And now, as of 2023, she is out.
She was released on open regime, which is essentially parole. She is living in a small town. She is studying. Reports vary between biomedicine and law again. But the most controversial update by far is that she became a mother.
She has a child.
She does. And this sparked a massive national debate in Brazil. Can a woman who killed her own parents be a fit mother? What does she tell that child about their grandparents?
It's a question without any easy answer, is it?
It really tests the limits of our belief in rehabilitation. We want to believe people can change, but when the crime is this intimate, this calculated, it's just very hard to accept.
So let's bring this deep dive home. What does this all mean? What's the big takeaway here?
For me, this case is a shatter point for the perfect family myth. We look at wealth, education, and status as protective factors. We think, oh, they have everything, they must be happy, they must be safe. But Suzanne von Richthofen proves that pathology doesn't care about your bank account.
It was a crime of privilege, not a crime of desperation.
Exactly. And it highlights the terrifying nature of the mask. Suzanne wore a mask of the dutiful, loving daughter for 18 years while she sharpened the knife.
And she's still wearing masks, right?
Yeah.
Trying to cheat personality tests, trying to curate her image in prison and now on the outside.
That's the lingering fear. Is she rehabilitated or is she just playing a new role? Has anything really changed on the inside?
I want to leave our listener with a final thought to mull over. We talked about the Swiss money. Somewhere in a bank vault, there might be 10 million euros just waiting. Suzanne served her 20 years. She is free, she's starting a new family, but Andreas, the innocent one, he is still trapped in the trauma of that night.
It raises the question, does the punishment really fit the crime? And maybe more importantly, if someone has the psychological makeup to kill their parents for freedom, Does that moral madness ever truly go away? Or is it just dormant, waiting for the next obstacle?
That is a terrifying thought to end on. Thank you for listening to this deep dive into the Suzanne von Richthofen case. It's a story about the masks we all wear and what can happen when they finally slip.
Keep questioning what you see on the surface.
We'll see you in the next deep dive. Stay curious.